What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Sean O'Malley praises Islam Makhachev. Dana White has been getting pretty fired up lately when anyone argues Jon Jones isn't the best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet. So the UFC president probably won't be on board with what Sean O'Malley recently had to say about this subject. If you follow this channel, you know that White's blood pressure has been rocketing up big time anytime someone disputes the idea that Jon Jones is the best fighter in the game right now. In fact, White even called the UFC's pound-for-pound rankings embarrassing, since Jones is currently ranked number 3. Well, ahead of O'Malley's September 14th fight with Merab, he spoke with Helen Yee. When asked who he thinks is the greatest fighter right now, he went with the lightweight king, Islam Makhachev. The greatest fighter right now? Probably Islam. And when Sugar was asked about White's praise for Jones, O'Malley didn't back off his original take. Jon Jones is up there. You look at the picture right now, and you go back 4 or 5 years, I think Jon's fought once in the last 4 or 5 years. Jon Jones is up there for greatest of all time, but right now, who's the greatest? Who's been active the last 4 years or whatever? I think it's Islam, but Jon Jones is always going to be in the conversation. Now, what's interesting here is that White also shot down the argument that Jon Jones should not be considered the pound-for-pound best on account of inactivity. Dana cites Jones's win over Ciryl Gane and the fact that he recorded that win after not fighting for 3 years as further evidence to his point. That argument, of course, doesn't directly address the fact that a lot of people believe Jones actually lost to Dominic Reyes in February 2020. But what's your opinion on this? Do you agree with O'Malley? Is Makhachev the greatest fighter right now? Or is Jones both the GOAT as well as the current pound-for-pound king, even if Islam is 8-0 since 2019? We reported yesterday that Alex Pereira believed that Israel Adesanya was injured during his fight with DDP. After our video was posted, Izzy seemed to confirm the reports by tweeting, "It's weird how this guy knows me. It's like we've spent hours studying each other's moves and fought multiple times or something. I mean that." Okay, up next, Aljamain Sterling and Movsar Evloev continue to go back and forth. Aljamain Sterling and Movsar Evloev continue to prepare for their October 5th scrap at UFC 307, and by the time we get there, it sounds like the two will have quite the score to settle. The featherweight contenders have been trading verbal shots for a while now, but more recently, their beef got even more serious after Sterling accused Movsar of using PEDs. Initially, Evloev didn't go out of his way to deny the allegation. He just warned Sterling that he won't feel a thing at UFC 307. That prompted the former bantamweight champion to note the warning also wasn't a denial. Not surprisingly, that didn't result in a ceasefire. Far from it, as since then, Evloev posted this. "You can talk now, but you'll be silent after the fight. Accusing without evidence is your coping mechanism when you lose. #Oscar, #actor. And once again, the Funkmaster argued his rival's response wasn't a denial. LMAO, you still can't deny it. You're a mental midget that needs a needle up the bum. Tell me you haven't taught anyone how to cheat and get away with it. You can't. #fraudster. #dopesar. That led to the undefeated Russian fighter posting this somewhat cold yet direct warning. "Where I'm from, making false accusations like that won't go well for you, but I'll be a businessman. I'll punish you and get paid for it. Just don't pull out." Evloev has also shared via social media that, of course, he's being tested ahead of his UFC 307 scrap. Your friend stopped by after you started complaining, but it won't help you. What's your next excuse? Now, as far as the Oscar and actor hashtags, one can only assume that's Evloev taking a dig at Sterling's championship win, which you likely recall came via disqualification against Peter Yan. All the PED talk aside, it certainly looks like fight week for UFC 307 will be an interesting one. Conor McGregor shares cryptic message. It had been a few days since Conor McGregor was making headlines in the MMA world, but that's all changed on account of a somewhat cryptic post the former UFC champion made via social media. Fans and haters have been waiting for the octagon return of McGregor for over 3 years now, since he snapped his leg in his 2021 rubber match with Dustin Poirier. Finally, he was booked to fight Michael Chandler this past June, but a broken pinky toe forced McGregor to the DL. Well, since then, speculation about if and when McGregor will fight has kicked off all over again. And more recently, all that talk has spiked on account of a recent social media post from the polarizing star. In addition to video footage of McGregor going to war with a punching bag, the Irish fighter noted, "When I get free." Now, one could certainly assume that comment's related to the fact McGregor has repeatedly said he wants to fight in 2024. Just recently, McGregor called to fight in December, after Dana White told the media the superstar would not fight this year. Further, it's well documented that McGregor only has 2 fights left on his current UFC contract, so McGregor's comments here are only going to fuel speculation that talks aren't going well. and that the 36-year-old has one foot out the UFC door. What do you think? Is McGregor serious about fighting out his UFC contract and maybe competing for BKFC, where he's an owner? Or could this be a negotiating tactic to get more cash? Okay, now let's look at Jiri Prochazka reveals he's considering a move to middleweight. In recent months, Jiri Prochazka and his camp have floated the possibility of him moving down to middleweight. Well, based on more recent comments the former light heavyweight champion made, it certainly sounds like it could happen. This past spring, the Czech samurai noted that he could drop to 185 pounds. And following his second loss to the current 205 champ, Alex Pereira, Jiri's coach also said a move could be possible. Now, a more recent interview is making the rounds, which took place before Dricus du Plessis defended his middleweight crown at UFC 305 by submitting Israel Adesanya. While speaking in Czech and discussing his future, Prochazka made this interesting comment. "I've been considering that if Adesanya wins, I'll stay in the light heavyweight division. But if du Plessis wins, I'll follow him. I'll clear things up a bit there and take the belt. But I feel good and strong in the light heavyweight division, even though the guys there are heavier, almost all of them. So I have to say that I have no problem physically and strength-wise, or in any way, with clearing them out. It would certainly be a challenge for me to go for the belt in the 84 kilogram division and then move up. So it'll be interesting to see what Jiri decides to do." Since he's lost twice now to Pereira, as long as Poatan holds the light heavyweight belt, Prochazka could have a tough time securing another title shot. That said, DDP already has the likes of Sean Strickland, Robert Whittaker, or Khamzat Chimaev to deal with at 185 pounds. Up next, Michael Chandler will regret waiting for Conor McGregor. Michael Chandler's been waiting for almost 2 years now to get his hands on Conor McGregor in the octagon, and like many other people, Matt Brown believes the lightweight's going to regret doing so. At the beginning of 2023, the UFC announced that Chandler and McGregor were going to coach tough, and the two would fight afterward. As you know, that has yet to happen, and as this video is being produced, there's no indication as to if and when it will. Despite all the delays and setbacks, Chandler has continued to campaign for the McGregor fight and has remained on the sidelines. So, during a recent episode of The Fighter vs. the Writer, Brown outlined why he thinks Chandler is going to regret doing so. "In my view, you only live once, and this is a short window of time in your life that you get to compete at the highest level," Brown said. "I think he's going to look back when he's 50, 60 years old and be like, I missed out on a couple of years there just waiting for a payday. I don't think he's hurting for money anyways, but I waited for this payday and I could have been out there putting myself on the line." I think Michael Chandler's a competitor. I think he wants to be out there putting it on the line. I think he's going to end up regretting this someday. Now, it's certainly true that if McGregor and Chandler fight, they're both going to cash a serious check. But even if that does happen, it's hard to dismiss what Brown's saying here. Chandler has not fought now since November of 2022, and he'll be turning 39 next April. Could Chandler have fought, say, 2 or 3 times by now, and possibly worked his way back into title contention? Magomed Ankalaev exposes Alex Pereira for lying about their fight. After Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree was confirmed, Alex said that Magomed Ankalaev denied the opportunity to fight him. Ankalaev responded to these claims on Twitter, writing, "This man is a liar. He's making up stuff. I'm gonna punish him after I handle my business." Okay, up next, Ronda Rousey shuts down UFC rumors. Although it's been almost 8 years since Ronda Rousey last competed in the UFC, and despite the fact that she's now 37, talk about her fighting again has never really died off. Well, maybe that will all finally change on account of more recent comments Rowdy made. Rousey ultimately exited the UFC following her brutal stoppage loss to Amanda Nunes in December 2016. That defeat followed Rousey's jaw-dropping KO loss to Holly Holm in November of 2015. The decorated judoka ended up going the pro wrestling route and performed for the WWE. But for years, there's been talk about whether, just maybe, Rousey would fight again. For example, as UFC 300 approached earlier this year, some folks wondered if the promotion might bring Rousey back, especially since it seemed like the UFC was having a tough time booking a headliner for the historic event. But while speaking to Chris Van Vliet more recently, Rousey made it clear she will not be returning to the octagon. "Every couple years, the same rumor comes out," Rousey said. "It's nice to feel missed, I guess, but it's not happening. I'm not neurologically fit to compete anymore at the highest level. I just can't." You just get to a level where the neurological injuries you take accumulate over time. They don't get better. And really, this news shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. In her recent biography, Rousey revealed that even when she was still fighting in the UFC, she was dealing with the consequences of incurring multiple concussions during her athletic career. Okay, up next, UFC updates. If you didn't watch UFC Vegas 96 on Saturday, then you didn't see Ryan Loder and Myron Santos Alves win their TUF 32 bouts and secure UFC deals. Lauder, who is a former NCAA All-American wrestler, put those skills to work and finished Robert Valentin with ground and pound strikes to win the middleweight tourney. Santos, meanwhile, won the featherweight competition by folding Con Ofli like a lawn chair with a booming left hook. So it'll be interesting to see where these two go from here. In other UFC fight news, recently, Marcel Dorff reported that Zigimantas Ramaska will battle Nathan Fletcher at UFC Vegas 97 on September 7th. The two were supposed to fight this past weekend, but the fight was postponed last minute after Fletcher incurred a medical issue. Ramaska is a Lithuanian fighter who'll be making his UFC debut, and he arrives in the UFC having won 3 straight and with an overall record of 9-2. Fletcher, meanwhile, is also waiting to make his octagon debut. The English lightweight is coming off back-to-back victories while competing for Cage Warriors and is 8-1 to date. Arman Tsarukyan vs. Islam Makhachev is reportedly in the works for UFC 310. According to Arman, the UFC is trying to set up a fight with Islam in December, and if Islam can't return before then they will set up an interim title fight. Here's what Arman had to say. Arman: the fight had to happen in October, but it was rescheduled. Now we have talks about December. Reporter: so you get a fight with Islam in December? If Islam won't recover by December, will you fight for the interim title? Arman: it depends on when he can return. If he can't compete by spring, I think UFC will make a fight for interim title. Top comments. Uncle Chael consistently having the worst takes imaginable. In the DDP post-fight, he said the blitz came every time Izzy threw a kick or switched stances. It was a great read from his coach, and it made Izzy hesitate to kick as much, and turned it into a boxing with takedowns fight which favored DDP. Alex going down to 185 for one fight is pointless. What? He wins the belt and then vacates it 1 minute later? Makes no sense. Adesanya threw some savage body kicks. It makes sense that he was more focused on his boxing, wanted a knockout, and was avoiding kicks for fear of a takedown.